Good evening from New York. As Americans prepare for this busy holiday travel week, Inspire magazine is out with some warnings. Here's a quote. This strategy of attacking the enemy with smaller but more frequent operations is what some may refer to as the strategy of 1,000 cuts. The aim is to bleed the enemy to death. Now, in case you don't subscribe, Inspire magazine is the new glossy publication from Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the terrorist group that took credit for the failed Detroit plane bomb last Christmas, carried out by the infamous underwear bomber. Yes, Inspire's terrorist rhetoric is ugly, but if you don't mind my saying, the magazine's holiday recipes on a budget really are not to be missed. Now, Al-Qaeda's strategy of 1,000 cuts inspired the Transportation Safety Administration to beef up its security with the more aggressive pat-downs that have stirred outrage among airline travelers and stirred comedy among Saturday Night Live writers.
Feeling lonely this holiday season?
Looking for little human interaction?
Do you want to feel contact in certain special places?
Then why not go through security at an airport?
The TSA.
TSA agents are ready and standing by to give you a little something extra to feel thankful about this holiday season.
The TSA.
What are you waiting for? I want to check under your testicles.
The intense media scrutiny has forced our highest-ranking government officials to answer some very uncomfortable questions.
I understand how difficult it is and how offensive it must be for the people who are going through it.
Final question. My time is up. But would you submit to one of these pat-downs?
Not if I could avoid it. No, I mean, who would?
Secretary Clinton may not like the idea, but her boss says the occasional pat-downs are the best way we have to stop the threat of another underwear attack.
TSA, in consultation with our counterterrorism experts, have indicated to me that the procedures that they've been putting in place are the only ones right now that they consider to be effective against the kind of threat that we saw in the Christmas Day bombing.
So, how big a problem is this really, and how much privacy are Americans willing to give up in the name of security? Joining me now are Thomas Sawyer, a retired teacher and bladder cancer survivor who's become the face of the anti-pat-down movement after he was humiliated during a TSA screening a couple of weeks ago. Also with us tonight, Rob McNeil, a transportation security officer and local president of the American Federation of Government Employees covering airports in Rhode Island and Connecticut. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. Thomas, let's begin with you. You experienced an enhanced pat-down at the hands of a TSA officer while you were traveling through Detroit earlier this month. Walk us through, if you don't mind, what exactly happened on that day.
I'll give you the short version. I was traveling from Detroit, Michigan to Orlando, Florida, and I haven't flown in a year. And Detroit has the new X-ray machine, and that's what I went through. And evidently at that time they saw my urostomy bag because I've had bladder cancer and had to have the bladder removed because the malignancy was high grade. I now have a plastic bag similar to this on my, down by my belt line. And I was immediately informed by TSA that I would be patted down. And I asked for a private room, please, and we went to a private room. And when we got in the private room, the first thing they asked was to take my sweatshirt off, and I did. And when I took my sweatshirt off, my T-shirt came up with it, and my urostomy bag showed underneath my T-shirt. And the TSA agent who was doing the talking said, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a urostomy bag." And he said, I don't know what that is. And I said, "Well, I have some medical issues that I need to tell you about." And he said, "No, that's okay." And I said, "No, I really need to tell you about some of my medical issues." And he said, "No, really, you don't need to do that." And I said, "No, I really do need to do that." And he started in with telling me the procedure of the pat-down, how it was going to go. So I never really got a chance to tell him about my urostomy. So I just thought, well, I kind of felt like inside he's in power, I'm not, let's just get it over with. And so I just listened, kind of, and he started the pat-down. And when we got to the chest portion, he used his open hand to slowly start moving down my chest rather firmly. And I realized he was getting down close to where my urostomy bag was. And I said to him, you need to stop for a minute. One, you need to go slower, and two, you need to go a lot lighter, because what's going to happen, you're going to catch your palm in the wafer and you're going to rip it off. So can you go a little slower? And he didn't. He didn't go slower, and he didn't go more gently. I asked him to do both, and sure enough, he got down to here, and because I only had my T-shirt on because he had asked me to take my sweatshirt off, his hand slipped between the wafer that goes on my stomach and the seal that the urine is collected in, and it opened it up just enough that urine came out on my clothes and then started dribbling down on my leg, on my shorts.
And Mr. Sawyer, what happened from there? I know you ended up actually having to get on your flight in that condition. Tell us about the rest of your day.
Well, a little bit more happened than that. I looked down immediately. I realized what had happened, and I looked down. I believe he looked down. I'm not positive, but I believe he also looked down. And by that time, there was about that big of a stain already of urine. And he had to go out of the office where they were patting me down in, where he was patting me down in, and check his gloves, I'm guessing for explosive or chemicals on his gloves. And when he came back in, he said, "You can go now." And I was more than glad to go now, but never an apology, never, "Are you okay? Do you need anything? Can we help you?" So I tried to go to the bathroom in the terminal, but Detroit Metropolitan is a huge terminal, and I just didn't know what to do, so I took off going to my terminal. And by the time I got to my terminal, we boarded in 5 minutes. I had to wait until the plane took off. I always carry a backpack with me with extra supplies, extra clothes, and got into the private bathroom, got myself washed up, took off my soiled underwear, took off my soiled T-shirt, and threw them in the bathroom trash can. I wasn't going to put them in my knapsack, and cleaned myself up the very best I could, put a new appliance on, went back and got on the plane until we arrived at Orlando.
Rob McNeil, I want to bring you in here as a transportation security officer. We should point out that the head of the TSA called Mr. Sawyer today to apologize. I understand that almost all of these pat-downs are carried out professionally and without incident. It's important to point that out. But what's your response as you listen to Mr. Sawyer's story?
To Mr. Sawyer's story, my response, I really cannot respond to that because I don't have firsthand knowledge of the incident.
Well, we take Mr. Sawyer at his word about the details of what happened. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I think that something probably went wrong with that. TSOs are trained how to deal with people with colostomy bags and other persons with disabilities, any disabilities that they may have. And if the TSO probably would have had a question, he probably would have asked a supervisor.
Well, I've been saying all along, it's not like these men and women who work for the TSA are enjoying having to perform these pat-downs. Nobody wants to, grope middle-aged businessmen on their way to conferences. But tell us what you're hearing from your people, the TSA agents who are working under these new policies.
Well, it's not a point of people enjoying what they're doing. What we're doing is we're trying to ensure that people end up at their destination in a safe manner. We try to treat people with as much dignity and respect as we can to get that accomplished. One of the fears that TSOs have right now is we're hearing stories of TSOs being assaulted, being insulted by people who they have to perform this on.
And you're talking about the agents at the gate, you're getting reports that they're being assaulted by passengers?
No, the TSOs at the checkpoint.
Okay. And
as they're performing the procedures.
It's less than...
And also they're being insulted daily.
As I said earlier, less than 2% of airline passengers are actually subjected to these pat-downs despite all the noise. But given the attention it's gotten, Rob, do you think the TSA is going to have to back off this new policy?
I don't think TSA is going to have to back off the new policy at all, because just like when we implemented the liquids policy in 2007, at first it was a shock to the system for everybody, but then after a while, the traveling public became more aware of the policy, and I think that's all it needs to become, is more media publication on a positive side of this.
And Thomas, you've said you're not going public with this story to express anger, but really to encourage TSA to change this policy. So what would you like to see done here?
Well, I take a lot of exceptions with what I just heard. I was nothing but polite, and I don't think that a trained TSA agent who I had to ask 3 times, could I tell you my medical history, and refused to let me, I don't feel that's very dignified. And if that's the way they're being trained, there's something really wrong. So I take umbrage at that comment. That just is not what happened to me. I never raised my voice. I don't advocate that anyone injure a TSA agent. That's wrong too. But I was not treated in a dignified manner whatsoever by my 2 TSA agents. I did need to say that. When I talked to the director today, I was really glad that John called me. We had a good conversation. He asked me what I thought should be done. I really believe that more training needs to be done. My 2 agents did not know what a ostomy was and said so. And I can't really believe in my heart that it just happened that I went to Detroit Metro and I found the one agent in the United States that hasn't been taught what the word urostomy means, and that immediately clicked him in to know, oh, that I know what that is, I know where that's at, I know what might happen. I just really have some problems with the other gentleman's explanation, and it's not compatible with the explanation I got with the director today.
Rob McNeil, a lot of people saying today there's got to be a better way than these pat-downs. You study this stuff for a living. Is there a better way than these scanners, number 1, and the pat-downs, number 2?
No, at the present time, there isn't a better way. But like Mr. Sawyer says, I believe what Mr. Sawyer said, and I don't believe he was treated with dignity, but the TSOs, for the most part, are all professional. They do know how to handle the situation, and it's just going to take a little bit of time for everybody to get on the same page with this.
All right, let's hope they do.
The traveling public and the TSOs.
Rob McNeil, Thomas Sawyer, thank you both for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.